Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Constantine from the Washington Times. Joining me, as he does all the time, my good friend for America, David Bozell. Hi, David.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. You know, the president has been picking different people for different jobs, getting a different response depending on who he chooses. But because he's Donald Trump, it is not the same old round peg in a round hole. He's picking some choices that could shake things up. I want to talk about one of them, and that's Kash Patel. Kash Patel was a staffer on Capitol Hill and then worked his way from there into a number of other things, and of course worked in the first Trump White House, and now has been suggested as the director of the FBI. In order to accomplish this, either Christopher Wray has to resign or Trump will have to fire him. One of those things will happen, and then you'll have an opening. Trump says Kash Patel is the man to run the FBI.
Right.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, so there was a flurry of nomination announcements at the beginning of the transition. The FBI announcement took a couple weeks. I suspect that he had Kash Patel in mind for quite some time. There has been a groundswell of support for him online, and I suspect that really there was a background check that needed to take place to make sure that everything was buttoned up. Something that probably didn't happen as smoothly with Matt Gaetz as I think has happened with Kash Patel. I do think he does get confirmed. Christopher Wray still has 2 years left on his term. It's sort of open debate as to when President-elect Trump will ask for that resignation, whether that's January 20th or sometime after that.
I was going to say 2 p.m. on January 20th.
Yeah, look, I think if I'm the president-elect and if I'm convinced that the 2020 election was stolen from me, and I'm convinced that my then FBI director did not do everything possible to help prove that, then yeah, I'm firing him at 2 p.m.
Well, and if you're Donald Trump, think about this for a minute. You're sitting at home, you weren't even there, but you know, your family is there, your workers are there at Mar-a-Lago, and all of a sudden it is stormed. There wasn't a phone call that said, hey, we need to come by, hey, we're going to do... The place was stormed as though he was John Gotti.
Yeah.
They came in, they took things, they went through Melania's lingerie drawer. That's the FBI that Christopher Wray was directing.
Yeah.
So am I surprised that the president wants to see that guy gone? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Yeah, so you got to fire him, right? So he'll be gone. So Kash Patel, he has promised all sorts of transparency in the investigatory phases. Really, does he allow and green light, things like Kennedy assassination documents to come out? I think he will, but I think he's going to be a really interesting choice. The FBI is kind of in an interesting spot right now. It is kind of a 4-letter word nationwide. It used to be, Tim, and you and I are old enough to remember that getting rid of the FBI director was sort of persona non grata. Like, you did not pick that fight if you were the president or if you were the executive branch. But Donald Trump has done such a good job, and frankly, the FBI this is self-inflicted because of what you just mentioned. But their reputation is such in the toilet that I don't think anybody cares.
Yeah, the frustrating thing is there are good men and women that are working in the various bureaus around the country that are just trying to do law enforcement. FBI people doing the investigation, the vast majority of them great people, but you've got some people in leadership that are not so great, apparently. I think of things like James Comey when he was there. We just found out, this got very little news coverage, but we just found out that James Comey ran a honeypot process on 2 of Trump's campaign people in 2016 off the books, meaning they had girls that were willing to go and sleep with these guys and get in their confidence and try to find out what was going on, only it was off the books. It was FBI money, it was your and my taxpayer money paying for it, but they didn't want a paper trail for it. Comey has acknowledged that now. To me, that's not only putting your thumb on the scale in a presidential election, that's going way beyond. To me, James Comey has committed a series of felonies by doing that. Anyone else involved in that did a James Comey's no Boy Scout, that's for sure. Right.
I mean, you're talking borderline treason, really, at that point. I want to know things like, the Whitmer kidnapping allegations, how the FBI involvement in that. I want to know about J6, right? I want to know the FBI presence in its totality, and in its completeness. Why didn't they stop, violence? I mean, we could speculate on that day till the cows come home, but I want to know their involvement in its totality. And I think Kash Patel has promised to release all that stuff, and I think the American people deserve it. So.
Kash Patel, of course, will be somewhat controversial. As recently as September, just a couple of months ago, he was on a podcast saying some very extreme things. And the left, the Democrats who sit on his hearings, are really going to pound him on that. He was saying various things that he thought should happen to the current FBI people that were pretty extreme. And the question is it appropriate? I don't know. But what I do know is I believe that Kash Patel will shake it up. We'll go in there. I don't think it's a vendetta. I think he believes there is a group, I do too, that there's a group in the FBI that has an agenda beyond simply law and order.
Right.
They've got a political agenda, and he's going to try to root those people out and get rid of them. That's not a bad thing in my mind.
It's not, and it goes from, I don't want the FBI creating databases for when people say things like "don't tread on me" online, or when people say words like "based." That's okay. We'll eliminate that from the jump. And on the bigger stuff, I want to know FBI involvement in some of these flashpoint issues. Kash Patel spent 10,000 hours of his own time proving that the Russia collusion story was a hoax and made up by the Clinton and paid for by the Clinton campaign. And he wants to know who in the FBI suppressed his own findings. And if I were that guy working in the FBI, I'd be putting up my for sale sign in front of my house and hightailing it out of here.
I would be freshening up the resume. You know, the one question I want, before we go, the one question I want answered out of the FBI, with all this transparency, I think the most important one, what really happened to D.B. Cooper?
I don't know either.
For America, he is Dave Bozell. I'm Tim Constantine. Thanks for joining us.